Hi guys and welcome back to the channel. Today I've got the on-track series video for the German tier 10 heavy tank, the E100. One of the oldest tanks in the game, the E100. And its line did get a reforge back in February of last year. Actually, that means it's about, literally 1 year. Roundabouts. 1 year since this line actually got its reforge, it got its buffs. And they pretty much buffed every single tank in the line, which is really nice because it sort of brings a bit of flair to an old line, right? Gives it a bit of new life, breathes a bit of new life into it, and really helps it out with a lot of the power creep that goes along that is in this game. Because obviously, being one of the oldest tank lines in the game, a lot of newer, shinier tanks have come out and sort of made them a little bit sadder, right? But the buffs have been great, actually, for this line, and I think there were some really great changes for it, and it made the line a really fun line to play. And yeah, if you don't actually know what the on-track series video is, we kind of show you what the tanks can do at their best, and how to kit, sort of a slight guide as to how kit the tanks out, and crew skills, that sort of thing. And just generally how certain tanks that you might not see that often are in a line, and see how your grind is going to be when you grind out the tier 10, for example. And yeah, this first replay run is the tier 5. Naturally, that's where we start, at the VK3001H. And the VK3001H, actually, in its olden days, used to be a medium tank, sorry. Yeah, the tier 5 and the tier 6, the VK3001H and the 3601H, both were medium tanks. And then they got changed randomly to heavy tanks, and they really slowed down the VK3001H. I think it used to be a lot quicker. And yeah, they didn't really change too much to it. I think they changed a bit about the guns, and that was it. It was a long time ago now, though. And I actually think it's a really fairly fun tank, because this 5.5, 7.5mm gun is honestly a fantastic gun. 157 pen on the AP, 221 pen on the APCR at tier 5. That's solid. It's a very, very good gun, and it's the same gun you're going to use on the tier 6 as well. It's just absolutely fabulous. It hits most of its shots. It's just so consistent. It's just such a very, very nice gun at tier 5. Now, this tank really doesn't actually have that much armour, though. You do have to be aware of that. It's only got 80mm on its lower plate, sorry, which, yeah, means that you can be penned by a lot of derp guns, especially a lot of derp guns firing heat. It's a lot better than it used to be because it did get buffed, and we'll go into the buffs in a minute. Because it used to be like 50mm, but your mid plate is still 50mm, which means that a lot of the lower pen heat rounds from derp guns like on the Shermans and the other German 105s can go straight through your mid plate really easily and just do 300 to 400 damage to you. And especially if they pen your lower plate as well, you're going to lose your engine, because unfortunately that's just what happens with these German tanks. So in terms of a crew, on all of these German heavies, to be honest, this crew that you're going to see is pretty much what I run all the way along, because they're all pretty simply very, very similar. And that is Born Leader, Rapid Reload, Sixth Sense, Situational Awareness, Steady Aim, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Track Mechanic, and Rapid Aim. Rapid Aim because they all actually have fairly slow turret traverse, and I really wanted to help the turret traverse out as much as possible. So that's why I run Rapid Aim. All the gun perks, because naturally they're heavy tanks, I want to help out the heavy tanks as much as I can with their gun handling. But to be fair, a lot of these German heavies do actually have pretty damn good gun handling in itself. It's a very simple template crew, to be honest, and you can sort of mix and match it as you want with every tank, because you can say, you know what, this gun's good. This gun is really good on this tank. I'm not going to run all the gun perks. I might run not smooth ride, off-road driving instead, to help with the ground resistances, to just help with the mobility because they're a little bit sluggish, etc, etc. There's lots of different ways you can run it if you wanted to. I like to run Rapid Aim just because the turret traverses are fairly slow, and I want to help that out. And in terms of equipment on the 3001H as well, I do run rammer, vents, and optics. Rammer to make the gun DPM as good as possible, vents to make everything all round great about the tank, and optics to make the view range as good as possible and help me spot for myself, pretty much. So in terms of the buffs that the actual 3001H got, well, the 3001H got some pretty decent buffs. It got a couple of the stock guns removed, which is nice. Always great for the stock grind, right? That they removed some of the really pointless guns. They buffed the gun mantlet from 80mm to 100, which helps it bounce a little bit on its turret now, which is decent. Helps it bounce, actually, the derp guns. Like I say, the derp gun heat shells, which can be annoying. It's still not great. It's got slightly better accuracy on its stock 75mm gun, and on its other one, it's got from 0.39 accuracy to 0.37, which is decent. Generally, this is a heavy tank that you don't play like a heavy tank. You don't see this tank and think, I'm a heavy tank, I can go bounce things, because it won't. Because it used to be a medium tank, it doesn't really have that armour. You want to play, even though you only go at 35 kilometers an hour, you want to try and play it more like a flanking heavy, right? And not be directly involved in the brawl. Be trying to support your allies as much as you can, or trying to get to positions where you can just farm with this very, very good gun, because it fires very, very quickly, and it's definitely it's just a really consistent gun. I mean, the derp gun is a lot of fun on the tank because it's a derp gun, and I'll always say the derp guns are fun, but naturally, I'll always try and show you the best gun to use, the most competitive gun to use for a tank, and this is it. It's a very good gun, and you can farm to your heart's content. As you see we're doing right here with this M44, who tried to hotshot us on the move. Thankfully, he missed. Set him on fire. That's our 5th kill of the game with 2.8k damage here on this map, which is Nomini Nom. We're on Nomini Nom. And we're on 5 kills, and I'm seeing this IKV, and I'm like, nobody kill this IKV. I want my top gun. I'm coming for you, sir. And we get a nice shot through him. Because he's one of those tanks that we do, while he is a very, very derpy gun, we have to be careful of the IKV-103 because his 120mm or 140mm of pen with his heat rounds for 300 alpha will easily go through our tank and will butcher us. Because like I say, this tank doesn't have any armour. So yeah, don't expect any armour from it. But as you can see right here, we've managed to get some shots on this hidden now who attacked our friend. And because we had 8 PCR left, we had some pretty nice shell velocity, and we managed to get rid of that guy and secure our 7th kill of the game. And finished with the victory. 7 kills, 3.1k damage, 426 assistance, ace tanker, the devastator, the sniper, high caliber, the top gun, 2.3k base XP. Really great game for the VK3001H, which is honestly a very solid start to this line. It's a very fun little heavy tank to play. You just have to, like, the big thing with the 3001H is just bearing in mind you don't have any armour, okay? No matter what tier you're at, you basically don't have any. And it does get its engine damaged a lot because the engine is in the front, and if they shoot through that lower plate, which is going to happen because it's a big juicy target, you will lose your engine. And it's not something that changes, to be honest, for most of the line. If they shoot you through your lower plates in pretty much all of these German tanks, you lose your engine. And you've got to be careful of those frontal fires, because those frontal fires like to happen too. And that can be pretty damn frustrating. So yeah, you bear that in mind. So now we're on to the tier 6. We're on to the VK3001H, sorry. And yeah, this gun gets a choice. This tank gets a choice of 2 guns. This 5.5 75mm gun that you're seeing here, which is, I think it used to be called the Konish, is honestly an absolutely fabulous gun. And you get an 88mm gun with 220 alpha. The 88mm has 145 pen on the standard and 194 on the premium for 220. It's a pretty nice gun, but I don't know, it just feels really derpy on this tank, and just really inconsistent for that reason. Also, you don't quite have the pen like this gun does with its 150 odd pen on the standard and 221 on the premium, which means it doesn't stand up as well against tier 8, which you'll see a decent amount of in this tank. This gun does. Now, naturally, it's not got the alpha, but it's just got the consistency of the great rate of fire, the great gun handling. So, why does that happen? I say, it's got great gun handling as it derps the floor. Thanks, game. Nice. Yeah, it's got great consistency, great DPM. It's just an absolutely fabulous gun for the tank, and it's well worth using this one instead of the 88mm, because you just deal some pretty consistently nice damage with it. It used to be a medium tank as well, which basically means that it's actually still kept its top speed from back when it was a medium tank. but they basically hurt the power to weight quite a lot, and unless you're going downhill, it doesn't really hit it. So I actually run rammer, optics, and a powertrain on this vehicle. The powertrain to just give it that little bit of extra oomph in the engine. You know, we want that bit of better power to weight to be able to help me get up to my top speed if I can. Because like I say, it is a bit sluggish and it will struggle to get up to it. And then optics and rammer obviously make my DPM 10% better and be able to spot for myself. Because we never want to be blind and get outspotted. Because that's generally death. So the 3601H got some buffs, and that is that the gun mantler on the tank, on the top turret, went from 100mm to 145mm, which, don't underestimate that. That means you can bounce a lot of shells off of this turret. It's not brilliant, and it's not like, oh, I can go hull down and be infallible, because that's not the case. But it helps you a lot to bounce a pretty good amount of rounds, especially when you're top tiering against tier 7s. And don't underestimate how nice that turret can be. But also, the caveat is don't rely on it, because it still will get penned. It's still only 45mm of armour. Also, the 88mm gun on the tank, which is probably, let's say, not really the gun to use, got a buff in terms of its DPM, went from 6.9 second reload to a 6.3 second reload, which is 2k DPM, which is really good on a tier 6. But like I say, that it's effective DPM, right? Because I just feel like that gun likes to derp a lot of its shells, and it's really frustrating. Whereas this gun, just goes, ha, lol, and pens most of it. As you can see with firing at an OI, which is heavily armoured, and we just made mincemeat of him. And yeah, this game on El Haluf, we've fought on the C2 area, and we are so far up to 3.3k damage, and we're just pummeling the shots into this Thunderbolt. Thank God it was a Thunderbolt firing standard, because he had trouble penning our armour. It's probably those sorts of guns that are around the 130, 140 mark of pen are the ones that are going to struggle if you actually angle your armour effectively. You can see I didn't sit straight on, head on to him. I made it as hard as possible for him to actually pen me, and we bounced the odd shot here and there. But naturally, this is another heavy tank that used to be a medium tank that basically has no armour and will get butchered quite a lot, and you do have to be very, very careful of that. But you saw just how good this gun is, though, in how fast it fires. That OI, we focused him down because he was using the big gun, and that would hurt me quite a lot. And I didn't want to get penned by him, essentially. So we just made sure that we loaded the premium, 221 pen, was going to butcher that guy's armour easily. We got rid of him, and yeah, we ended up with a very nice total at 3.4k damage with 5 kills. And we're just motoring along. Like I said, the mobility of this tank isn't actually that bad. It's quite nice to have that 53km/h top speed with the powertrain in. But it doesn't hit it very often, and like I say, I want to help it along with that powertrain. This is a tank that you might want to run off-road driving on, just to be able to negate its terrain resistances a bit and help it. So right here, I actually joined the cap because he was spotted in this direction over here. I went into the cap because I thought, maybe if I go in the cap, he'll just drive out in front of my gun. It just happened. And we finished with the victory, 6 kills, 3.5k damage, ace tanker, top gun, high caliber, and the steel wall. 2,100 base XP. A nice game for the 3,000... I'm going to keep doing that. The 3601H. Pretty solid tier 6. And to be honest, this tank is a good trainer for what the Tiger 1 is going to be like. And yes, we're at the famous Tiger 1. The tank that a lot of people would probably say is the reason they went, yes, tanks. Oh, there's a Tiger. I want to go to that. And people ground out the German heavy line, right? For me, it was the M4 Sherman. That's why I really got invested in the game, because I was like, oh, that's really cool. I can drive an M4 Sherman. It looks really shiny in my garage. And that's why I went for it. The Tiger 1 was like, oh, look, a Tiger 1. That's cool, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, a lot of people will say that the Tiger 1 was one of those things that they just had to drive, because it's just so iconic. And it is absolutely iconic. However, in-game, the Tiger 1 is a bit of a mixed bag, because it's pretty decent. I mean, it's got really good DPM, and it's got a pretty nice gun, but it's a big box. And at this here, it tends to face tanks that were designed to destroy it, and thus they destroy it very, very easily. really what you've got with the Tiger is the hit point slabbed to be able to trade effectively. So where you will be doing stuff is basically you'll be taking a shot and then dealing 2 to people for the most part. Because the DPM is a very fabulous thing on this tank. So the gun handling is pretty decent as well. The only bad thing about this gun really is the actual aim time, which can be a bit frustrating because it feels like you're aiming for quite a while. But yeah, I always like the Tiger 1. I just think the best way to describe a Tiger 1 is it is a Tiger 1. I don't think it's the best variant out of all the Tigers out there, and that's the Tech Tree one, because I still think that's probably the Skoda A18, right? The Czech Tiger. But it's old but gold. It's still a fairly decent tank. It's just a basic concept to flank and not be the focus of attention if you can, and do some damage with just how consistent this gun is. It's Tiger 1. It's a big box. Don't ever rely on the armour. Ever. Ever. But it does have a cool skin. That is one thing for this tank. It does have a pretty damn cool skin, which is pretty nice. And yeah, they did actually buff the Tiger 1 as well, which was pretty cool. It probably needed a bit of love. And that is that the armour mantlet on the turret went, or the gun mantlet, the armour mantlet, the gun mantlet went from 160mm to 180, which is actually really good. It's actually quite nice for its tier, because that means you will bounce quite a lot of the tanks at tier 7 that have that sort of 170 pen range, which is quite a lot of tanks. So that means that if you go hull down, you might actually have a chance of bouncing stuff off your turret. But you just do have to be very, very careful about what you go for and face. Also, the roof armour got buffed from 25mm to 35mm, which means you're not going to get overmatched by too many tanks on the roof now, like most tanks do, which is good. That means they truly will struggle a little bit with your turret. They're not just going to auto-ped it. The 88mm gun as well on the stock one had a DPM buff, and its pen buff from 145 to 160 and 220. They never really changed anything with this top 88. The only thing I really wish they would change with the top 88mm gun is the aim time, because I feel like the aim time is just a little bit slow, to be perfectly honest. Because its aim time is actually, I think it's 2.7, I want to say. And 2.7 seconds on the aim time is just a little bit slow, and it doesn't help you in a lot of situations, which is why on this tank I run Rammer, GLD and optics. I run the GLD to make, because the DPM's so good, I'm not really bothered about vents. I just want to make sure that this gun can get aimed in a little bit quicker, and I think I get it down to like 2.4 aim time with the GLD, which is a lot better than 2.7. And that's why I run that. It's really the only downside to the tank apart from the no armour, and it has a cracking skin, as you see in here. And right there, we tried to ninja the kill on the GW Tiger P to give me the Pascuches, but it didn't quite happen. We finished the game with 4 kills, 2.4k damage, the ace tanker, 938 assistance, 1750 XP. It's a pretty decent game for the Tiger 1. Like I said, the Tiger 1 is just it's a decent heavy tank at tier 7. It's not anything to shout about. It's not anything really that special, if we're honest. It's just pretty decent, and it's just, with the gun, if you're getting yourself into a nice flanking position, and you're actually probably better off as a sniper in that tank, to be honest, because the gun is absolutely fabulous, you will put out some pretty nice damage. But now we're on to an even more iconic tank, and that is the Tiger 2. And the Tiger 2 is a tank that always had one of the best guns at tier 8. The gun is phenomenal. 0.31 accuracy is insanely good. It's just, the accuracy on this tank is just utterly insanely good. It's just so good. I can't reiterate that enough. It's just so nice. And in terms of equipment on it, I run the Rammer, vert stabs and optics to make the all-round tank just as good as possible, right? Better DPM, better everything with the vents, and be able to spot for myself with the optics. And yeah, this tank received quite a lot of buffs. And in terms of its buffs, it needed it. And that's in the turret front armour, went from 185mm of armour to 245, which is absolutely huge. And as you're seeing in this replay, we're going to use that to good effect. We're going to bounce quite a lot off the turret, which is nice. The turret roof got buffed from 40mm to 50, which means it doesn't get overmatched by 120s. Well, 121 caliber guns, basically like the Russian 122s, essentially. Its side armour went from 80 to 120 and 100 to 140. I think that's like rear and front of the tank side turret profile, essentially. The turret buffs were massive, and it really helps the tank hugely to buff a lot. Sorry, to bounce a lot, not buff a lot. The buff was a lot. And then they buffed a lot of stuff. So on the top 105mm, they actually buffed the DPM a little bit. It went from 10.4 second reload to a 10 second reload, which is, again, really quite nice. It just gives that little bit extra DPM. And it just helps this gun hit a little bit more often, because this gun is one that doesn't really need actually that much help with the gun handling, because this Tiger 2 is one that you could probably change up the crew a little bit again, because you don't really need snapshot. This gun handling is phenomenal. I'm going to keep saying it because it is, and you don't even need to run vert stabs. You could just drop snapshot and put other things on, again, like off-road driving to make the ground resistances better, or there's many other skills that you could probably take to help out the tank. So in terms of this game on Lakeville, we basically pushed the valley because, naturally, having better turret armor, 245 turret armor is phenomenal for this tank. It means it doesn't get penned all that often in the turret anymore, which used to happen all of the time. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to go to the valley to see if I can bounce some shots. And we managed to bounce a fair bit, bounced 1280, and we managed to get 4.2k damage with a bit of assistance, because the gun is, again, just so consistent. It's really nice. And then you get 225 pen on the standard AP and 285 on the premium as well. The penetration on the gun is great. You're going to not struggle with anything you're going to face with that. And, yeah, it's a solid tank. Faced with the Ace Tanker, the Sniper, the High Caliber, and 1606 base XP. A really nice game for the Tiger 2. And, yeah, the Tiger 2 is just as iconic as the Tiger 1. And as a tank now, after all its buffs, I mean, I did release another video on the Tiger 2 not that long ago, so if you want to hear more thoughts on the Tiger 2, go watch that video. And I did go over the buffs in that video too. It just really helped the all-round tank, and it just made it an absolutely fabulous tank, to be honest. I really like the Tiger 2. And it has really cool skins to choose from as well, which is always nice. It's always nice to have hero skins for tanks and them look really cool and make the tank just have a bit of character about it and be really cool. So, yeah. Don't adjust your headsets in this replay, because this replay randomly doesn't have any audio. Why? I don't know. It just decided, no, I'm not going to record any audio for you. So there is no game sounds, so it's not you, it's me. And we're on to the tier 9. It's the E75. And the E75 is, well, just a fabulous tier 9 heavy tank, to be honest. It's one of my old favourites. It was just so much fun to play, even back in the day, because especially after they buffed the mobility a long time ago, and gave it way better mobility, it just had a big slapping 490 alpha gun. Its mobility wasn't that bad, and the armour was everything you wanted from the Tiger 2. The upper plate bounced so much, the turret bounced quite a lot, the gun was decently accurate for such a big gun. 490 alpha with 246 pen and 311 on the premium was just fantastic, and it was so much fun to play, and it still is. The E75 is honestly a solid tank, and it's one of those tanks that's like the Tiger 2 in a way as well, because it's basically the same sort of design, right? That if you can get yourself into a heavy tank brawl in a city, get a side scraping, because you will bounce a lot off these sides, and you will be able to, bounce quite a lot of damage in general. That's what the E75 is good at. It's what you should be trying to do, as you can see with side scraping off this little rock here on El Haloof too. And yeah, it got some buffs, the E75, which was pretty good for the tank, and that is it got its top turret buff from 252 on the front to 265, which again helps it bounce quite a bit off its turret when it's hull down, which is nice. If you are fully hull down as well, it can really bounce quite a lot of damage, so it's a nice asset to have. And in terms of the 128 as well, they actually buffed the aim time from 2.9 seconds to 2.7, which is really good, because that extra 2 seconds on the aim time is, well, 0.2 on the aim time, sorry, is something that you can't underestimate. It just gets the gun aimed in a little bit quicker. That helps you get the shots out more and helps you with your effective DPM. It's just quite a nice little quality of life change for the tank. And yeah, it's an old but gold tank. I do love this tank. And it does have a Black Friday skin, like you're seeing here as well, which you can get around Black Friday. So in this game on El Haloof, we've come to this little ridge because it's just a place you go, right? And we are against a Super Conqueror that's hull down. And Super Conquerors have a weakness, and that is if you have 300 plus pen, especially rounds that aren't heat, you can go straight through their turret ring. And that's what we did to that Super Conqueror. We saw him, he sat there, we just fired the premium round straight through the turret ring, which naturally damages the turret and just negates the fact that they're hull down. So if a Super Conqueror is giving you that turret ring, aim for it with the premium and pen it. You're not going to go through it really with standard rounds, because you do need that 300 plus pen, realistically, to go through it. And we've really dealt with this flank. We've done 2.8k damage with a bit of blocked, and now my team's basically won the flank. I see the tanks that are popping up in our base. That's just that little bit of awareness you've got to have, because the progression next was thinking, right, where am I going from here? Once we've won that flank, I was thinking, right, okay, we might want to push straight into their base. But that's basically what my team is doing. And I saw one tank pop up at H5, and I thought, ooh, I might need to go back to base and see if I can help defend that. And then like another one, and then another one popped up. So it was like, okay, I'm definitely going back to base to defend it. And it's possibly a good option, like I say, because they are attacking the base and we don't want to get capped out. We try and pop a nice little shot at the Waffle E100 in the distance that actually ended up out of render range, but we don't hit it, sadly. And now there's a Batchat that's driving in the open. That didn't look like it was ever going to hit, but we do slap the shot into the Batchat 25T there, which is nice. Weird, random things sometimes with this gun. It's like almost a visual glitch, right? Because that shell never looked like it was ever going to hit that Batchat, but it flew in, so we'll take it. We get a nice shot there into like the viewport of the Waffle E100, and we notice this Batchat's going in on our heavy tank, so we're going to help this guy out. We slap a big shot into the back of that Batchat, which sets him on fire and shuts him down. Again, just having that little bit of awareness to know that that guy was going to try and get in behind one of our team, and we didn't want a Batchat in behind us, because naturally he would have probably reloaded and then started unloading on us, and with the Batchat being a Batchat, he would have clipped us out, and we don't want that, because so far we're on for a pretty good game. We're up to 5.3k damage, and now that Waffle is reloading, I've decided, okay, I'm going in. It's time to now flank this medium tank that is over here, which is the T-54, because I can get close to him, because the Waffle is not going to poke out and clip me out, because again, it's a dangerous tank to face, and I can get the drop on this T-54, hopefully, which is exactly what is happening with my perfect driving here. We get a nice shot into the side of the T-54. He starts turning towards us. Naturally, he's firing heat with his gun, which is going to just absolutely wreck our lower plate, sadly. But he gets shut down. We couldn't quite get the shot into him there. I really wish I had HE loaded at this point, because it's always nice to put a big HE shell into a Waffle E100. But we get a nice ped into that guy, and the Chieftain finishes him off. And we'll finish the game with 6.2k damage. The victory, 1720 blocked. Ace tanker, the high caliber. 1879 base XP. Really nice game for the E75. Honestly, the E75 is such a fun tier 9 tank, and that's worth the grind all in itself, is playing this tank. There's always tanks in lines that you go, yeah, that's worth playing, right? Because the tier 10s aren't always the be-all and end-all. You get a tier 10, you play it, and you might have loved the tier 9 so much that you find the tier 10 just a little bit disappointing, right? And that was always the case for me for the MX M454, where I loved the M451 a lot. Same as the Conqueror and the Super Conqueror. I loved the Conqueror so much that I played the tier 10 Super Conqueror and was like, I love the Conqueror. And the Super Conqueror is, yeah, the Super Conqueror is absolutely fantastic tank. There's nothing wrong with that tank. But I just prefer playing the tier 9. Same with the MX M451 over the 54, right? And the E75 is a tank that's well, and there's always tanks in lines like that. It's just well worth playing the line just to play those sorts of tanks. Like the Tiger 2 these days as well is well worth just grinding the line just to play that. And the tier 9 at the E75. And the E100 itself has actually got some buffs as well, which is pretty nice. And this tank is actually pretty decent. It still has quite a few downsides though, that you do have to be careful of, and that is stuff like the turret front. Even though it did receive some love, the turret front is just something that can get absolutely butchered by premium rounds, unfortunately. And yeah, it can be a bit of a sad time. It's also fairly... Naturally, it's a super heavy tank, so it's a little bit slow as well. But you do get two nice gun choices in the 128 or the 150. Both really fun guns, both really solid. And this first replay is going to be with the 128, the second replay with the 150. You also have a multi-weapon system on this tank as well, which means you have a 75mm gun in the turret, which is not the most helpful tank gun in the world, to be honest, because it basically has, like, no pen, I believe. I think it's something like 87 pen on these premium heat rounds that this gun gets. It's not going to help you too much at tier 10. But if you face the tanks that are really low armor, it could be, you know, it could be okay. So in terms of the 100, in terms of its buffs, I do believe it got a buff to its turret front. Yeah, it did. 250mm to 270, which will help you bounce a decent amount from tanks that have around 300 pen on its APCR or heat or stuff like that, which is nice. Or, you know, like your own 128mm gun, you might bounce quite a few shells from that these days, as opposed to the previously with only 250, because 250 just got butchered by every type of premium round it was ever going to face. And the 128mm gun got a massive buff. It went from a 14.3 second reload to a 12.5 second reload, and a 2.9 aim time down to a 2.5. That buff to that 128 is huge, and it made it a really fantastic gun to use on the tank. Great DPM, good accuracy in terms of being able to get the gun on target, and just a really solid gun to use. It's probably the better gun to use on the tank, just generally because of the, again, the consistency is in its DPM. And in terms of the 15cm gun, it got an aim time buff from 2.9 to 2.7, which again is nothing to be sniffed at. It's pretty nice. The one thing I would have kept changing with the E100 is, instead of 270 on the turret front, I probably would have made it more like 300, so that it doesn't struggle as much against the 330, 340 heat pen as much. If you angle it, you'll probably bounce a bit more, because unfortunately it does get rather trashed by the 330, 340 heat. It's just a sad time, unfortunately, for the E100 turret. In terms of equipment on the E100, I do run rammer, vert stabs, and optics. Rammer, again, 10% more DPM, always. Vert stabs, because both guns aren't the most accurate in the universe, so you just want to help them out, right? And really, the feature of the tank is the armor and the gun. And optics to be able to spot for myself. And I run the same on the 75 as well. I run rammer, vert stabs, and optics. It's exactly the same layout, as opposed to a lot of the other tanks where I've been running like rammer, vents, and optics. And yeah, this first game in the 100 with the 128mm gun, we've been on highway and we pushed the town because we're in a super heavy. And as much as I could sit on the mid-ridge, which is always a valid tactic to run from this side because you can just cut out anyone attacking from the AB line, the town is a vital place to win for our side because it stops them coming up on our flank while we're defending the cap. And if you win the town, that means you can also push their base as well. But so far in this game, they've pushed quite a few tanks into the town, and we are currently winning it. We're up to 4.8k damage with 169 assistance. Our other E100 has gone in on this 705A, so I'm just starting to try and help him out as much as humanly possible and keep slapping the rounds in. We were side-scraping, but that other E100 was poking round and just... Not E100, sorry, the other 705A just kept poking around and slapping big rounds into us. And now this Badger is looking at us, and it's like, okay, this is a bit awkward. We've loaded premium because we were fighting the 705A, and the angles are a bit awkward. And now we're firing standard at the Badger, which is a bad play, because the Badger, we're probably actually going to bounce off his lower plate there. And we're just trying to keep popping shots at this Badger as much as we can. Although we did get shut down in T-441. And at this angle, yeah, the standard round is never going to go into that Badger. We need the premium round. We were using the E100 a minute ago to help us because he was tracked awkwardly in front of the Badger. But we were trying to help him because he had more hit points. Try and keep our own hit points and keep pummeling this Badger and keep giving him something to think about. And just generally keeping more guns in the game. And thankfully, the Badger ends up getting shut down. Because the penetration is 246 on the standard rounds, and it's the same on the 150 as well, it's 246, you do have to use premium a decent amount, when you are facing quite a lot of tanks, because 246 can bounce a lot. Can just lead to some very, very awkward bounces. Where 311 on the APCR and 340 on the heat on the 150 will quite easily go through everything. And in this first game, we got Ace Tanker, the high caliber steel wall, 1588 base XP. A really nice game for the E100 with the 128mm. Probably the better gun, but to be honest, it is a case of probably when you use the 128 playing a tank that's just a little bit worse than a mouse, right? Because you sort of don't have the armor like the mouse has, but you have the same gun. And the 15cm is probably the one I'm more likely to use, and I prefer using the naturally. You know me, in this channel, I like alpha. And the 15cm is just all me. 750 alpha, 246 on the standard AP round, 340 pen on the heat round, or 334 pen actually, just having a look. Filthy, you're going to pen everything. And this tank with the 15cm has always been a heat spammer. Most people, when you see it played, will just fire heat a lot of the time, and that's why I run 20-20-10, because you can switch up to whatever you want. HE rounds at 85mm with 950 pen as well is always useful for tanks like the Waffle E100 and slapping shots at them. And yeah, I love this 15cm gun because it just hits hard. It gives, again, it's another thing of giving character to a tank, right? And that, sure, I could play with the more consistent, better DPM 128mm gun, or I could play with this higher alpha gun and have a bit of scare factor. And, you know, people see you with this 15cm gun and they go, oh, God, no. It's also helpful for tanks like that STRV 103B, because I can go through that guy quite reliably and overmatch his armour. And I'm looking at him like, okay, you know what, I'm going to slap some heat at this man. And try, well, I'm going to try and use, look at the shell velocity on this 75mm gun. While it is heat, and that's not going to do too well against this 103B, and I've made a mistake by switching to heat. I don't think I meant to. I think I meant to just switch to the secondary gun, and I accidentally ended up loading heat there. The SDRV 103B is going to be very effective against heat because of all the heat shields and stuff, so it wasn't going to go in. Whereas the AP, I'm actually more likely to overmatch this bloke. Unfortunately, that one ricochets, and, well, the great equalizer in artillery comes in and shuts that guy down. Yeah, the 103B, don't really fire heat at it because it's not going to work. Try and use a gun that's going to overmatch and you'll deal some big damage to it. And with that guy going on the flank, we can be a little bit more aggressive. You can see I'm angling my armour as much as humanly possible against this Skoda. But unfortunately, he must be firing. He's definitely firing premium, this T56, because he went quite easily through my lower plate. And that's a big problem for the E100, because the lower plate is a big, fat target. And no matter how much you angle it to an extreme degree, it just seems to get butchered a lot of the time. And it's just something to be very, very careful of, that you will get quite easily penned in the lower plate if you get caught out. And quite a lot of the time as well, your engine goes, like I say, if you do get penned in that lower plate. So we've loaded the heat for the i7, because the i7 is one of those tanks where 246 pen on the stand AP can lead to some very awkward bouncers. Now the heat, if we got the side of the i7, is going to be awkward, because if we get his side, it might just get absorbed. But also, if off the lower plate, because of the way the lower plate is angled, 246 pen might just ricochet. We get a nice shot there into the lower plate of the Jagdpanzer E100 as he was coming over. Very kind of him to give us his lower plate. And with this heat round in, oh my lord, the derpiness of the gun. That is the thing with the 15cm gun. It is a little bit derpy. As you saw there, we fully aimed the shot at the superstructure of the Jagdpanzer E100 there, which we can pen with the heat, and it flew off to the moon. And unfortunately it missed. And that shot just unfortunately ricochets as well off the i7. Yeah, the 15cm can be derpy, as evidenced by that shot that was on the superstructure of the Jagdpanzer. And you just got to be a bit wary of that. That's where the 128 is a little bit nicer as well, because the 128 can feel a little bit more consistent in terms of dealing that damage. And there we go, another shot missed on the Tiger 2 there. Let's say this gun can be really derpy, and it can be really frustrating in that. So we're in the middle here. We actually get hit by two tanks. We got hit with HE, and I was thinking, okay, what was that? It hurt quite a little bit. And then something else hit us. So I'm like, okay, no, I can't stay in that middle lane. because I'm just being shot at. We can't stay there because they clearly have shots at me and I'm not going to spot them. So what we're going to do is actually go on the outside here, see if we can try and find artillery, because his artillery is somewhere in this distance, get rid of him, and then be able to try and win the game. And looking at that, it's probably the Cobra that was firing Hesh. That's probably what hit us with HE. And yeah, we're on top of this ridge here. We're just going to go see if we can spot the artillery that might be in their base. And if not, maybe I'm in a position of Overwatch, right? And we could be in a position here where we'll actually get shots at anyone that gets spotted along the 7 line, and I'll be able to shoot them. But at this moment in time, no one's getting spotted. The 3 guys on their team out of the 5 actual tanks were spotted at about E9. And I was thinking, that's majority of their tanks. You know what? Because we were getting shot from over there a minute ago as well, we're just going to push straight towards the Magic Forest, try and get over there to help our team out and get some damage off on those guys and try and just stop them killing those guys that were at C9. But unfortunately, they ended up dying, and there's naturally a problem with E100 because it's slow. Sometimes you have to try and be a little bit quicker in your thought patterns and try and be a little bit quicker in trying to get towards flanks to help them out, because you are just slow, and that means that naturally their flank could fall quite quickly before you even get there. But what I'm hoping to do now is try and spot any of them as they leave the Magic Forest. But we spot the medium tank and the E5 there, but we just got in an awkward position where I can't quite get the gun depression to shoot the E5. We can actually shut down the Cobra here if we get the shot in, which we do, which is really nice. That gets rid of that guy. The E5 is clearly going for me, so I'm like, okay, angle, angle, angle. Hopefully he'll miss. If he's firing heat, he might only do track damage, and he ends up bouncing off our side. The key to the E100 is always trying to maximize your angles with, well, just angling in general. Try and keep yourself at a tight angle, and hopefully, maybe, they might bounce off your armour. Unless they're firing premium, in which they still kind of go through your... Like, an E5 with 340 heat just butchers the poor E100's turret, and you've got to be very, very careful of that, no matter the angle on it. So they still have 2 TDs, which is an FE4005, a Panzerjäger, and then the heavy tank, which I'm not quite sure what it is at this point in time. And I'm just being careful, because if I get spotted and a 4005 decides to launch an AP round at me, I'm going to die, because I only have 915 HP. And well, he has 1,100 damage. And there, the 4005 gets spotted. There we go. That's the cue. That's the cue for me to think, right, okay, I can now go and be with my people. I can go and try and move up into a different position. There, the TNH 105 1000 gets spotted, and I'm like, okay, you know what, I'm just going to use the secondary gun and see if I can launch some heat rounds at him, but my teammates, my heavy tank and my TD, are probably going to be able to deal with that guy, so I'm just going to ignore him and get towards this 4005, because I don't want this 4005, again, to get into a better position where he can get shots at me, because it's not going to end well. And there we end up spotting the Panzerjäger, so we managed to... That is filthy. We loaded the HE round for the 4005 because 950 damage into that guy's turret was going to be really nice. We ended up spotting the Panzerjäger and slapped the HE into the Panzerjäger for 900 plus damage, and that nearly took him out of the game. We nearly actually one-shot him with that, which is really nice. Because naturally, again, he's another tank that is very dangerous. He's got high DPM, he's got really good camo, he can hide from us quite easily. We get a big HE shell through the 4005 there for 905, which is exactly why we had the HE in. And now we are using the secondary guns to try and get damage on this 4005. Unfortunately, the shell velocity is so horrendous that we're not quite hitting it. But our main gun is now loaded, and we managed to fire the last shell straight through that 4005 and get rid of him. Now, we've got a big problem. The Panzerjäger. It's quick, it's got absolutely fabulous camo, it's got a great gun and fantastic DPM. It's going to be a struggle to, number 1, find it, number 2, spot it. In general, that goes with finding it, really. And number 3, not get penned by it. And there's going to be a lot of situations where that Panzerjäger can put himself in, where he'll be able to fire at us without getting spotted, and he'll probably pen us, because he has such good pen at 268 on the standard and on the heat. But, fortunately enough for me, and the mobility as well, the mobility for him to actually flank round to different places helps him. But fortunately enough for us, he's actually stayed on that little ridge, and I managed to spot him, but I just couldn't quite get the gun to bear on him, and he managed to get back behind the ridge. So I'm trying to cut him off. My thought is he'll either run straight back up the one line towards our base, or he's going to run into the forest over there and try and get concealed up, or run down the K line. So I'm trying to just get into a position, so that I can actually cut him off, get shots at him, stop him getting away from me. But I never spotted him going down the K line, and I never got spotted myself. And there we go, we end up getting spotted. That's just how mad that thing's camo is, though, right? In the fact that we actually spot him up, and he's halfway along the K line. He didn't spot me, though, which was weird. And unfortunately, that means he's got away. And the nearly fully aimed shot on the Panzerjäger there, we were just let down, really, by the shell velocity on the E100, 15cm gun, and it missed. And you can see we're detected. He's firing heat, which is not going to be good for my turret front, so I'm just trying to keep myself angled again, so that he can only really see my side. And the 15cm, unfortunately, derps again, and we missed that Panzerjäger. We were unfortunate to miss the first one, but that second one was definitely incredibly unfortunate to miss him. Could have shut down that guy right there and then, but it's now just like, oh, he's got away. And I'm looking at this going, do I want to chase the Panzerjäger again? There's 4 minutes left on this game. This Panzerjäger can run circles round me. And the ability to get damage, or the ability to actually hit him, has already proven quite difficult. And I'm starting to think, do I want to keep chasing this guy, or do I want to go and sit in the cap? Because if I go sit in the cap, naturally, we can still win the game, and we're not going to get done in by him just running around in circles for a whole 4 minutes, and then we play this whole cat and mouse game. But number two, if we go sit in the cap, we might actually draw him towards us. Because naturally, like I say, it's got fantastic DPM, it's got a fantastic gun. And I'm looking at it going, he could quite easily pick us off one by one, and then we just lose the game outright. And that's not what I want to do at this point. We've done 6.8k damage, we've blocked 4k, we've got 1600 assistance, we've got a few kills. And I'm looking at it going, no, I don't want to throw this game away. We've had a nice game so far. We've got another E100 friend with us. I'm going to get in the cap and try and draw him towards me, so that, well, if he has to reset, he's going to expose himself, hopefully, and we can kill it. So we're just going to move ourselves into the cap, and we obviously have a nice building we can hide behind as well, which is decent. So we managed to get ourselves in the cap and start the cap timer. 1:40, 1 minute 40, we're going to cap in that, but I want the other E100 with me as well, because obviously it might get to a point where if I'm the only one in the cap, the Panzerjäger ends up shooting me, resetting the cap, and then we'll probably still win just on numbers, but if he ends up picking me off and killing me, then it might go down to RNG on who wins, and we don't want that. So now we're in the cap. I am just waiting for the other friend to get in, and I'm watching a direction. Because quite frankly, this Panzerjäger could come from absolutely anywhere. So I'm just being prepared that he might show up. I was watching the right-hand side because that's where he was obviously last spotted, running away. So I thought maybe if he's hidden somewhere along the 9 line, he might come back along the 9 line to try and defend the cap. Unfortunately, my E100 friend ends up destroying a bit of my cover, which is not quite what I wanted, but he does apologise for it. Then we get spotted and it's like, he's taken the bait, he's here. There we go, he ends up resetting the cap, and this time you're not getting away, you little pest. And we managed to shut down the Panzerjäger with the third try of the shot. And we finished the game with the victory, 6 kills, 6.9k damage, 1600 assistance, nearly 4k blocked, ace tanker, high caliber, top gun, the steel wall, 1754 base XP. A really great game for the E100 with the 15cm gun. Say the 128mm gun is probably the better gun on the tank, but this gun is a hell of a lot more fun. E100, pretty solid tank, absolutely fantastic tank line, well worth going up, definitely. So as always everybody, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.